I get so many questions in the comments. Can I still get a Quest 2 for now? How long can I keep using my Quest 2 before I'll really need to have a Quest 3? And before about a month ago, it really seemed like the Quest 2 was still compelling enough, but it's starting to show more and more that Quest 3 is where developers are going and where the possibilities are opening to, especially because of the sensors and technology built into the headset. You might have recently heard of HTC's new inside-out trackers. These are very similar to the pucks that you've seen for a long time in full body tracking that people wear all over their body, except now these could just be worn directly on your body. But Virtual Desktop now has an answer to that, where you can actually just use the Quest 3's inside-out body tracking and emulate those exact Vive trackers. That means no charging Vive trackers, no strapping on Vive trackers, and no having to pay for a bunch of trackers. This, of course, is used with the experimental inside-out body tracking that we've been talking about the Quest 3 has been utilizing. There's even a demo where you can play around and see your body while dodging soccer balls that helps show off how this is working. Basically, the Quest 3 is watching from the lower cameras on it to see your wrists, your elbows, your shoulder, your torso, tracking all of that. But then with the lower body, it's using Meta's new generative legs feature, which is using what they say is a cutting edge AI, which is estimating exactly where your leg positions are. And that leg support actually goes for the 2, the Pro, and the 3 also. If you're not already following Luna on Twitter, a great source of early Quest information. You can see here Luna testing out the desktop's Vive tracker emulation, even seeing the traditional Steam VR box up in the corner showing which sensors it believes it's detecting, and it shows the Vive trackers even though those aren't being used. Another interesting feature coming out in this Virtual Desktop update is it's actually allowing you to emulate the Valve Index controllers using just the Quest's controller-free hand tracking. This can be extra effective in things like VR chat, where there's actually whole classes teaching people sign language, and now you could use your actual hands instead of relying on controllers. At least some of this is still working over on Quest 2, but there's going to be a lot more you're going to see for Quest 3 that's coming that isn't going to support Quest 2 as much in the future. For the most part, even big titles like Asgard's Wrath 2 and Assassin's Creed are still coming to Quest 2, but we are seeing more exclusives starting to come to the Quest 3. Although some articles are saying this new game Starship Home is the first Quest 3 exclusive, by my calculations it's actually the third. Maybe that's because they're saying this utilizes the full mixed reality capabilities, but basically Starship Home is a new plant-filled mixed reality adventure game, and it's promising it's actually a narrative-driven story. You set out in your living room and it actually turns it into a starship using the pass-through, and then you go in your starship, and then from your starship you embark on an interplanetary expedition. It sounds pretty peaceful. You're collecting, nurturing, and befriending alien plants, and even using your built-in environment to set them around your home to take care of them. You've seen on the channel before, we played First Encounters. That is a game that automatically comes with the Quest 3 and isn't available to download on the Quest Store for the Quest 2 or Quest Pro. So I would say that's an exclusive. And then remember, Townsman VR came out and was also an exclusive Meta Quest 3 game. So again, although we keep hearing this the first, I do feel like we're starting to see that trend of some games coming that are going to be only Quest 3. And although none of these are the big head-turning game that you need to own, it does make me wonder how much more life we're going to see before some of the bigger games start only developing for the Quest 3. On the bright side, news is further developing that Meta is looking to open up the XR space a little bit. It's been a subject of much scrutiny that they have their own closed ecosystem with the Meta Store, and there's been a lot of anti-Meta marketing that's talked about how other platforms have used OpenXR or are working towards OpenXR so the entire space can be open and available for everyone. But Meta has actually announced they have a strategic partnership with W4 Games, and with the goal being that there would be more OpenXR support, making it easier for developers to create Quest games using the Godot engine and getting them out from under always having to work through either Unity or Unreal Engine. In W4's blog post, they remind that they're on a mission to help the video game industry reclaim control by strengthening the open source Godot ecosystem, and now are collaborating with Meta to significantly improve the game developer experience with Godot on the Meta Quest platform. When we were at Meta Connect this last year, their biggest theme they kept bringing up was they wanted to make things easier on developers, and it's nice to see that this seems like they are actually working towards that and not just saying that to comfort developers. When it comes to big game development in the VR space, hearing anybody say that they're making a game inspired by Roblox and Garry's mod is pretty exciting with those big names. Squiddo Studios, the creators behind No More Rainbows, which was actually nominated for Game of the Year last year in VR, are talking about this game as combining the limitless creativity of Roblox but with a physics-based drag and drop system like Garry's mod. We now have a date of April 23rd. This is supposed to drop on App Lab in early access, and I will say Anarchitects has me interested and excited. I already put that date in my calendar to check it out the day it comes out. Although unfortunately so far the animated trailer doesn't give us a whole lot to go off of as to what the game is, I do trust that with a studio that made a game like No More Rainbows, this is something to hopefully be excited for. If you're looking for more games to get this spring, there is a sale going on the Quest Store, but it's not as terribly obvious as other ones because usually the games just drop a sale below and show the percentage. This is another one of those ones with a code that you use at checkout checkout. Spring 30 takes 30% off at checkout. This sale does run through March 24th, and it does have some of the biggest new names in VR gaming on the list. Arizona Sunshine 2, Assassin's Creed Nexus VR, Asgard's Wrath 2, of course a big one, and an extremely expensive game. And with the 30% off, that's actually better than the referral code discount of 25%, which we've talked about before. Although I will warn you, more and more of these new games that have been coming out aren't offering referral codes to people who buy them to give to anyone else. So it does look like maybe they are starting to wean us off of that system, and we're going to actually have to start watching for these sales more to get good deals on games. You can see the list up here on the screen, but basically right now, if you are going through the Meta Store and buying some games, make sure and try to put that Spring 30 code in at checkout and get as much savings as you can on any games you're buying. Although we dropped a list at the beginning of the month for the upcoming games of the month, another one has been added now. March 28th, Tropico VR is actually coming over to the Quest store for $29.99. This was a game actually back from 2011. If you don't already know, Tropico 4 brings you into the game as El Presidente, customizable character. You are the ruler of a Caribbean banana republic, and this is a city management and political sim. You've got to do your best to take care of your citizens and then get reelected, otherwise you lose the game. It's good to see bigger games coming out like this for Quest, as too many times we're complaining about getting short tech demo-y games, especially these kind of ports that have been brought over from other VR headsets. The game not only has a campaign, there's tons of post-launch content, comes with a game that's nearly 15 years old, I guess. DLC packs, further missions, all kinds of stuff. So if city management is something that you've been really looking for and missing out on, Tropico might be one to add to your calendar. One of my personal favorite games I spend the most time in on Quest, Walkabout Mini Golf, is adding another course this summer from a name you might know, Wallace and Gromit. If you somehow haven't tried Walkabout Mini Golf yet, I've got to recommend this game again. It just has such solid mechanics with the golf ball, the clubs. I see people all the time getting too immersed in this game and trying to lean on a wall and almost falling over, even though the game doesn't look realistic. There's just something about the mechanics that are so convincing that eventually you play enough of it and you start to feel like you're in the world, and now that could be the world of Wallace and Gromit. This course doesn't come out till the summer, but there's tons of other courses, even big names like the movie Labyrinth, the game Myst, all in Walkabout Mini Golf. It's just something that I think every Quest owner should have Walkabout Mini Golf. One of the biggest names in VR we don't talk about enough is Pico, because unfortunately Pico headsets didn't really make it over stateside, and even the one that I got to test, I had to use a VPN on my phone to set up, make it think it was in Europe. Well, it seems like Pico is still pushing on. The Pico 4S has now been trademarked, and there's new controller icons showing up in the Pico software. Once again, first brought up by Luna on Twitter. I swear, one of the biggest sources of VR news at the moment. We had seen images leaked before on Chinese social media showing potential new Pico controllers that were believed to be for the Pico 5, looking very similar to the new Quest controllers actually. The folder in Pico software actually showed the ringless controller design, but was removed in the next version. It's interesting because the news was reported before the Pico 5 was canceled because the Pico sales for the 4 fell far short of ByteDance's expectations, but that they did mention there was plans to release a refreshed version of the Pico 4, referring to this potentially Pico 4S. This refresh would also use the same Snapdragon XR2 Gen 2 processor we already see in the Quest. It seems like Pico isn't out of the VR race yet. And speaking of things that use the Pico headsets, Virtuix, the new Omni One VR treadmill they have coming up, has now dropped a list of games it's going to support at launch. If you aren't familiar with this, Virtuix, they were the creator of the Omni, one of the OG VR treadmills, one that was a little clunky because it held onto your waist, your arms couldn't go all the way down, you couldn't crouch. They are launching their Omni One VR treadmill this year. 35 games ready for the device's launch, and some exciting things about this new treadmill. It actually has its own ecosystem built into the headset, so it should be simpler and require less hacking to actually get the games working on it while on the treadmill with that wireless headset, and with some big games that could really utilize it, especially a game like Hubris that has lots of moving around, the new Wanderer Fragments of Fate game, and some exciting news for those of you who stuck around this late in the video, exclusive to the channel here. We are going to actually be flying out to Virtuix headquarters and trying this Virtuix Omni One ahead of launch. So watch out for videos talking about our experiences there, getting to try this and seeing what it's like. I'm just really excited at the potential of a VR treadmill that has everything built into it so that it'll work easily and feel less hacky. Although with this one coming in around $2,600, that's definitely not quite a consumer level yet, but we're getting closer, as these things used to be completely out of reach. Exciting things coming up for the channel, for the VR industry, and for all of you out there. Thank you so much once again for being here and supporting us every day, and I'll see you in another reality.